Hello everyone, and welcome to the first iteration of what I consider to be the Casual's Beginner's Guide to Path of Exile. This guide is designed for both new and returning players that fit into the casual category. No-lifers, streamers, and hardcore players are in a whole other category and will at most find some enjoyment by listening to me ramble about stuff that's pretty much second nature for them at this point. With that out of the way, let's begin. Path of Exile revolves around a league system that basically gives players the chance to start over in what's similar to a new server. Every 3 months, a new league is released that adds new mechanics, skills, bosses, and more. And well, the previous league gets merged into Standard, the, let's call it, Everlasting League. A grand majority of players opt to go for these new leagues, and that's where I play as well, so it's definitely what I'd recommend to everyone. Path of Exile is a complicated game, particularly when it comes to builds. Making your own character from scratch with properly optimized skills, items, and passives is largely gated for the grand majority of players. To put that into perspective, I have close to 2,000 hours in the game, and while I could make a decent build that would do fairly well, it would be inferior to another version with better pathing, better item skill interactions, and better support. I would highly suggest going on build indexer sites such as poebuilds.cc and looking for builds that have keywords such as budget, league starter, or beginner in the name. I will be leaving this link in the description down below. With this in mind, let's talk about choosing your first build in a new league, typically referred to as a league starter. As a player that might make at most 2 or 3 builds in total in one league, choosing the right starter build for what you want to do is extremely important. From personal experience, I can tell you that sometimes choosing the right build is what will make you enjoy and play the league for most of its duration. On the other hand, going with something that you don't end up liking can seriously hamper your experience for the whole league. Let's begin by outlining some of the most important factors you should take into account when you choose a league starter. Starting with the most important factor of all, you need to enjoy the skill gameplay. In this sense, following the meta is, well, much less important. Just to give you an example, a few leagues ago I started with a Storm Brand Inquisitor. At the time, it was one of the most popular and meta builds, but I didn't enjoy the playstyle. I stuck with it, and that ended up being a mistake as I was just forcing myself to play, leading to massive frustration and me just, well, quitting the league in the first 2 to 3 weeks. Let me reiterate how important it is that you enjoy what you play. This should always be your priority, above everything else by a mile. To get an idea if I'll enjoy a build or not, I typically look at a video of normal mapping, since that is what you'll be doing for the majority of the time. If you don't know what mapping is, don't worry, we'll go into detail on it a bit later on, but for now, let's just leave it at that it's the end game of PoE. Do you want to be a speedy boy and run at the speed of sound, clearing everything really fast? Are you into large chaining explosions that shatter huge packs of enemies all at once? Maybe you want to be a mega tank that can just stand in front of bosses and take them head on. You can choose to be a summoner, or a miner, or dozens of other build types. So definitely take your time to look through the good portion of them and make your choice based on what you feel you will enjoy the most. A second important factor is how easily can you actually make the build. By this, I'm referring to specific items that are required to get the build up and running. Items, such as the Surrender Shield, are build defining, as typically the build itself revolves around the item and some of them can be much easier to trade for than others. Builds that include the keywords we outlined above might include some of these build defining items, but they'll typically be much more affordable and easy to get than the rarer ones. Again, let me reiterate how important enjoying the build actually is. You could choose a build with millions of DPS that plays like garbage and is horrible to use. Enjoying what you play means you'll stick with it, and we'll get to harder and newer content earlier, which is typically much more enjoyable to play. Now, with the way the game can substantially change after each patch, I really can't in good conscience recommend a skill or build as it might get dumpstered by a patch later on down the line. I can recommend looking at forum build indexer sites such as the one outlined above, poebuilds.cc, link in the description down below, and checking out YouTube for some league starter lists for whatever league PoE is on. Now here I do want to highlight one of the issues with the indecisive player, as this is something I've struggled with myself. Re-rolling too many characters can and will hurt your league experience. A lot of the more enjoyable content comes with maxing out a build and tackling some of the harder endgame content. Re-rolling too often will keep you in the campaign and early maps for much longer. This can lead to frustration as you're unable to get into the enjoyable endgame content that requires a stronger character with more playtime invested. Loot filters are absolutely mandatory to play PoE. But you really don't need to stress yourself out too much with this. All you need to do is go to filterblade.xyz, click on download, choose option 2, download file, and just download all the strictness levels as a zip file. After this, just unzip the folder inside your PoE documents folder. To find this, just go to Documents, My Game, Path of Exile, and drop and unzip the folder in it. The filters will then appear inside the options menu in the game. Replacing these with every new league is strongly advised, as there will be new items and shifts in item value that need to be updated. Any extra details with loot filters is largely unnecessary for regular play. You really just need to do this and you'll be perfectly fine. With this, everything we needed to prepare to get straight into the game has been finished and we can start our journey. I'm going to very briefly explain some important game mechanics in the off chance someone completely new didn't understand some of what was said in the build guides. Now, a quick side note here to talk about the skill tree. Yes, it's very big and confusing, but honestly, just follow the skill tree outlined in the starter guide you chose. As you play more builds, you'll naturally start to learn the skill tree and what's generally considered good. Don't try to make sense of it yet. Let this process happen naturally, with experience. Skills in PoE take the form of gems, an item that you can socket or place inside empty sockets in armor and weapons. You have to match the gem color with the item socket to be able to socket it inside, but white sockets accept all colors. Items come pre-rolled with sockets that can be modified with special items. You can modify colors, number of sockets, and links. Links between sockets allow for gems to interact with each other. A fireball gem can be linked with lesser multiple projectiles to allow for more fireballs on each cast. To get this effect, the sockets must be linked. Gems such as fireball are known as active gems, while gems such as lesser multiple projectiles are known as support gems. Gems level individually to the player and require certain stats such as strength or intelligence to use at certain levels. Now this has been a very brief explanation of how gems and sockets work that should be good enough to get you started. Hopefully, if anyone was confused by something they read or saw in a build guide related to this, it has now been made more clear. I'll also take a brief moment to explain how currency works in PoE. There isn't an all-encompassing currency such as gold. Instead, there are different currency orbs that all serve a crafting purpose. Their value is then determined based on how rare they are in addition to how good of an effect they possess. Exalted orbs are the second most valuable currency orbs because they let you add a new modifier to a rare item, making this currency orb capable of crafting the most powerful weapons in the game. In addition to this, they are also very rare, so players won't see too many of them drop naturally, further increasing its value. A special note must be made for an item called Mirror of Calandra. This is the absolute rarest item in the game. This item is worth dozens, if not over 100 Exalted Orbs in value, so if by RNG's blessing you drop it, do yourself a favor, save it, and sell it later on. Trading will be discussed further down, so just hold on for a quick minute if you actually don't know how to trade. Now the next thing you'll be facing is the campaign, a 10-act storyline that serves as, well, a massive tutorial in a sense. While some players enjoy leveling up a new character, the majority of players will want to get through this relatively fast. As a point of comparison, at league starts, it will take about 6 to 7 hours for me to get through the 10 acts. In general, the majority of what most players consider the best content starts after the campaign, when you've started the endgame, which is called the Atlas, or maps. I would highly suggest that the campaign be done at a relatively quicker pace with the objective of reaching maps within the first week. I'm not going to tell you to no-life it and reach maps in the first or second day. Some players will definitely do this, but I doubt they will be reading a more beginner, casual-friendly guide such as this. To be fairly efficient and quick in reaching maps, I'll set down some rules or some suggestions for you to follow. Don't fully clear the zone you're in, kill most of everything in your path, but don't go out of your way for the stragglers or tanky rares. Don't loot everything. The loot filter will greatly help in this regard, as it will alert you with sounds and visuals when valuable items drop. White items should generally be ignored, and blue items will start to be ignored within the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game. Rare items are always good to pick up while leveling, and anything else will be highlighted by your loot filter for you. At 3 points during the campaign, you will unlock a difficulty of the Labyrinth. This is a special area that when completed will let you unlock an ascendancy, with each consequent completion of the higher difficulty ones granting extra ascendancy points on their first respective completions. Ascendancies generally grant huge power spikes to the player, so don't forget to do these. Each version of the Labyrinth requires certain trials to be completed before you're allowed to enter it. These are in the campaign for the first 3 versions of the lab, and in maps for the 4th and final version. The Labyrinth also rewards enchantments and treasure chests upon completion. These are largely irrelevant until the 4th version of the lab, known as the Uber or Eternal Lab. For all intents and purposes, the only thing we really want from the lab is the ascendancy points. Now, to make things a bit easier for you, I'm going to be giving you a bunch of quick tips to help you get through the campaign as quickly and easily as possible. Sockets are king. You want to have your main skill in an item with as many linked sockets as possible. You can make up the stats on items where your sockets aren't as important, but prioritize sockets over mods on the item you'll be placing your main skill. Resists are important. You'll get a permanent reduction to them at 2 points in the campaign. Early on you can get by with very little resists, but starting around acts 3 to 4, you really want to start looking for better resists. 75 is a natural cap. Always run a Quicksilver Flask, ideally 2 if you can. These give you extra movement speed, and movement speed is king. Get boots with movement speed as soon as possible. Even 10% will feel better on your character. Items with 3 linked sockets of a different color will be highlighted in your loot filter. These are chromatic items. Sell them to vendors for a chromatic orb. Items with 6 sockets will also be highlighted in your loot filter. These can be sold to vendors for 7 jeweler orbs. Skills classified as spells don't rely on your weapon damage and are generally better on characters with no gear. In Act 2, you'll be asked to deal with bandits. Help the one known as Alira. You'll get resists and mana regen, 2 amazing stats for early leveling. You can always change these later on by googling how to get a Book of Reform and following the steps in the wiki. After doing Lily Rost's quest in Act 6, she will sell most skill gems at level 1. After you finish the campaign, type /passives to see what passive points quests you've missed. Congratulations! You've beat Act 10 Kitava, and you're officially in maps now. You can start running maps and raking the levels and currency. Don't forget to balance your assists after you've defeated Kitava, and start running some maps! Generally, the formula I follow for investing in my maps is as follows. Tier 1 to 5, I transmute. Tier 6 to 10, I alchemy. Tier 11 to 16, I chisel, alchemy, and sometimes corrupt or vol. I will reroll T14s and above for good quantity. I would highly suggest going on YouTube and searching PoE Atlas guides. The 2 results by Zizaran and ZiggyD are perfect, and I'll also be including links to them in the description down below. Properly explaining the Atlas would take a video on its own, so again, I highly recommend watching one of the 2 videos I mentioned. At this point, it's you against the world. Get strong, reach higher tiers, beat bosses, you have the whole world ahead of you. So, while you've had a couple league mechanics unlocked before you reach maps, they're largely not worth doing until after you've reached maps. I'll be explaining them briefly. Nico is the Delve Master. You will find soul fighter maps that you can use in the mine, the infinite dungeon, a place that gets harder the deeper you go. Delving can drop fossils, special items used for high tier crafting, and is, in general, very rewarding. Betrayal is absolutely too complicated for me to explain in such a short amount of time, so I'll be linking a video by Zizaran that does a much better job explaining everything Betrayal. The TLDR is, you get syndicate encounters and maps that you organize a board that dictates what is dropped when you kill whoever's on the board. You can get scarabs to Betrayal, which is really nice. Incursion encounters will open up a small map with 2 options. Choosing one of them by killing the respective boss in the map will upgrade or change the map in the temple. You will also get keys to connect rooms in the temple. Once you've done enough of them, Alva will open a temple that will reflect all the choices you've made during the incursions. Specific rooms will drop specific items or have special abilities, such as a tier 3 corruption room, being able to double corrupt an item. Bestiary and Blight are rather self-explanatory. Kill stuff, get rewards. Bestiary lets you use capture beasts in the menagerie to do special recipes, while Blight is just tower defense. Xana lets you run a second map within the map that has random maps, and Legion spawns a huge wave of frozen monsters that you need to break out of their shells to be able to face for real. Whew, wow, okay. That was a bunch of leap mechanics in a very short period of time. I really do encourage you to look for further information on any of these that you want to know more about. In this final section of the guide, we'll be going over trading. Trading is a vital part of PoE, well, unless you're playing SSF or solo self-found. To access trading, you just need to go to pathofexile.com/trade. This will open up the official trade site made by GGG, and you can look for any item you need. You can look for rares, uniques, special gems, divination cards, or anything really. This is also where any item you're trying to sell will appear. The easiest way to sell an item is to set premium stash tabs to public and set prices on the items. The other way to sell items without a premium stash tab is to use forum index applications such as procurement or acquisition. I've personally never used them and would recommend waiting for a sale to get a few stash tabs for trading. Items are generally sold in Chaos, or for more expensive items in Exalts. If you list something and get instantly messaged for it, look up the item, as you're most likely underpricing it. The opposite is also true. If an item has been on the market for a couple days and not sold, try lowering the price or checking the current market price on similar stuff. With that, I've covered everything I really wanted to cover for this guide. I didn't want to go too in depth on any particular topic to make this guide easily digestible for everyone, and I tried to outline my points in a simple, direct manner. I hope you found something useful or enjoyable in the video. As always, I'd love to know any thoughts or questions you have in the comment section down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to see more content like this.